ancient astronaut theory is one that encompasses a bunch of old people and a bunch of old shit that people think were made by aliens. But today we'll be discussing a very specific, almost all-encompassing at the same time, concept of the ancient Sumerians and the Anunnaki. You guys like my shirt? Look at my shirt. You like that? I don't wipe. The ancient Sumerians worshipped gods known as the Anunnaki. However, in modern theories, some people believe that they weren't just gods, but potentially interdimensional beings, or even aliens. Aliens. So the gods were really just aliens, and they just were building all sorts of crazy things. So the theories about the Anunnaki and like ancient aliens and all that connects to a ton of other theories such as Atlantis, the Hollow Earth, everything else, the Flat Earth even. It just goes on, and the Book of Enoch even. I'm not going to talk about those in depth in this video specifically. We're going to be only focusing on the Anunnaki. However, if you are interested in those other topics, I do have a couple videos on the channel already discussing Atlantis and the Hollow Earth, so you can check those out if you want. Now, I know some people get offended by the ancient astronaut theory because they say it's like a pseudoscience, and some people bring in like race and everything. Get that out of here. I don't fuck with that. If you're thinking that, get out. Cause like, grow up. It's just fun. It's just whatever. It's not that deep. Okay, it's just conspiracy. I wanted to talk about the Sumerians and the Anunnaki because I feel like it's a good, like, I don't think foundation's the right word, but it connects to so many theories that it's one of those ideas that you should be aware of if you're gonna talk about conspiracies and all sorts of weird stuff with like ancient societies and everything like that, just because so much relies on theories of ancient astronaut and like interdimensional beings and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of like a good like groundwork for other things, or at least in my mind it is. In this video, we'll be talking about what like the mainstream academia says that the Anunnaki were and how they existed versus the more conspiracy ancient astronaut theory type ideas. So each Anunnaki had their own specific cult dedicated to worshiping them specifically, and depending on where you get your information, the amount of Anunnaki seem to fluctuate from a few to a ton, so do with that as you will. Through archaeological studies, the Anunnaki were described as being how do you say that? Anthropomorphic, which means to associate or ascribe human-like features to a non-human thing. They are described to have extraordinary powers and to be massive, so big aliens controlling the planet. So the anthropomorphic thing I thought was interesting because it kind of, in my conspiracy theory brain, comes off like you're describing something that's not human with human features. And to me, it makes me think like, well, what if these ancient people, not to downplay their intelligence or whatever, but were looking and interacting with something that wasn't quite human-like, per se, and given the understanding of the world around them and the thing that they're looking at or worshiping, this is the best that they could do to describe this entity. Does that make sense? The Anunnaki are said to have worn melum or melamu, I think is how you say it, probably not, which is an ambiguous substance which is said to cover them in a terrifying splendor, whatever that means. An interesting note about this ambiguous substance is that it could also be worn by kings, gods, and even giants, and in some accounts even demons. And it sort of means like a divine like radiance. A more modern example I should say, is like a halo for an angel, or sort of like you see paintings that have like a saint or a divine figure have like a glowing orange little round thing around their head to signify that they're somehow divine. That's the closest example of something that I understand that I can attribute the same characteristics to. The effect of seeing one of the deities melum on a human is described as Ni, I think is how you pronounce it, N-I, which is a tingling sensation of the flesh. Some scholars compare this description to feelings that people experience during moments of extreme terror or awe. So it's sort of like a holy shit kind of, oh my fucking god, this is actually happening feeling. Whether that's good or bad, I guess depends on the event happening, or in this case, just how awesome these ancient astronaut theory these beings are, which makes sense if they're godly, at least in comparison to ancient man, you know. Several texts state that the Anunnaki even took up dwelling amongst human beings and decreed the fates of man. And some even go as far as saying that they are responsible for the creation of mankind itself. During the Old Babylonian period, a new set of deities known as the Igigi were introduced. Now, the relationship between the Igigi and the Anunnaki are a little unclear. However, in the late Akkadian Atrahasis epic, the Igigi are the sixth generation of gods and were basically enslaved by the Anunnaki to do forced labor. The Igigi rebelled against the Anunnaki because slavery, and the Anunnaki Enki, I think is how you say it. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. It's spelled like this, so don't come at me. This Enki god then creates mankind to replace the Igigi, and I think this is interesting because there are a lot of theories about like pre-modern man entities, and maybe there's like a connection between like the theories that talk about like a pre-human society or a great ancestor of ours or something like that that is supposed to be better than us or something like that. That's like a whole rabbit hole and all that, so I'm not going to go super deep into it, but it's just thought, again, it's connected to so many different things that each topic that I feel like I bring up could be its own spin-off rabbit hole, but it was just, food for thought, I guess. Another text is the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the immortal survivor of the Great Flood, Utnapishtim, I can barely read English, so let alone whatever the fuck that name is, who, by the way, outside of being immortal, survived the flood because Enki told him the flood was going to happen, and then instructed him to build a boat, I don't know, maybe like an ark, with a bunch of animals on it, and his family to survive this cataclysmic flood. Again, go watch the Atlantis video, go watch the Hollow Earth video, it connects, it's all this weird, it's just weird. So maybe there's, I don't follow Christianity, but I do think that there is some historical events that religious texts and these ancient epics kind of like portray, and the fact that there's like a through line is really, really weird. This guy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, describes the Anunnaki as the lords of the underworld who set the world aflame pre-flood, and then the flood happens, destroys a bunch of people, kills off humanity, kind of, and then the Anunnaki mourn the loss of their slaves, basically. So, again, I thought this was kind of interesting because I'm not claiming that they're all-knowing beings or anything like that, but if they're going to warn somebody, then it seems as though that they do have some form of forethought, or could, kind of see that this was going to happen. And if they were all-knowing, not claiming that they are, why mourn an event that you knew was going to happen? Not that you can't do that because it would low-key suck, but there's like a weird line between like them knowing and warning this guy about this flood, and then also being upset that it destroyed humanity. But if they knew it was going to happen, how come they couldn't have warned, other people about it? Made preparations, for it to happen, I guess. It gets a little murky. I don't know. Maybe you guys can leave a comment on your own thoughts. I would love to hear that. Now, get your tinfoil hats on, because this is where the conspiracy rabbit hole starts. This is the more fun part, I think. So if you've made it this far, I think you'll enjoy the next half of the video. So this is where the ancient astronaut theory starts to connect to the Anunnaki. And for those who don't know what the ancient astronaut theory is, it's kind of like a blanket term for a bunch of massive other theories, I would say, that basically states that humanity was started or visited by some kind of extraterrestrial beings and or interdimensional beings that did any number of things with early man, from supporting them and teaching them things, or watching us, or were a test lab for them, or just any number of theories spin off of this ancient astronaut theory. That the gods that we worship, or the gods that were worshipped, are actually aliens. Which, technically, I guess you could argue that anything that is out of world then could be considered alien. But this is more of like, we're from the planet Goob Glob, and Mormonism is correct. In his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, Zaccharia Stitchin claimed that the Anunnaki were actually an advanced humanoid extraterrestrial species on an undiscovered planet named Nibiru. This also is talked about in my soul farming video. So check that out, because again, it all seems to weirdly fall in on itself in this weird, like, connected red string, big brain. It's very complicated. There's ancient astronaut theory suggests that every conspiracy theory that you ever thought of about existence is true. The elite eat babies, so like if it came out that we were all created by aliens, I wouldn't even be upset at this point. I mean, fuck it. I mean, why not? In his book, Stitchin claims that the Anunnaki showed up to Earth about 500,000 years ago to set up bases and mining facilities to collect precious metals, because Earth was rich in specifically gold. Within this theory, they needed gold to insulate their planet and protect it from radiation and other things. So the idea is that they would force early man to mine gold, and then they would bring it back to Nibiru to sprinkle within the atmosphere to achieve this. Does this have any real backing in science? Like, would that happen? I have no fucking idea. I didn't look into it. I'm talking about ancient astronaut theory. I'm not looking into real science for this. Goody. Come here. What? You see the camera's on and you want to be in another video? Do you want to be in another video? What? You've been meowing all day. Look at this. Look at this baby. Look at this little baby. Do you feel better now? If you guys like Gertie and you want Gertie to be in more videos, let me know. I saw a comment talking about how you guys liked Gertie. So maybe she'll be, in videos more often. Theoretically, Nibiru orbits our sun and passes Earth every 3,600 years or so. Nibiru roughly translates to crossing or a point of transition, and is said to have the passageways to the heavens and can be summoned by the Anunnaki at any point that they want. This makes me think of UFOs. This makes me think about how the Earth or the moon is a spaceship, and all the planets aren't real, and they're all watching us, and it's just like this huge schizo thing. But on a real note, this does come off very, UFO type. This so-called planet is supposed to be summoned whenever these aliens or these gods want it to be. That sounds a lot like a spaceship. According to Stitchin, the Anunnaki hybridized their species with Homo erectus via virtual fertilization in order to create humans as slave species to mine for them. Now, this does obviously, as if you've been paying attention, lines up with the epic stories. Now, I'm not saying that Stitchin is a genius or anything, because I could take stories from any religious text and any epic and be like, well, actually, it means aliens that had sex with monkey people, and then it became us. That's kind of how it comes off. But it is interesting because he then claims that the Anunnaki had to leave Earth after the Great Flood because it destroyed all of their bases here on Earth. And in order to rebuild their bases and rebuild Earth after this flood, they had to teach the remaining humans agriculture, metallurgy, math, astronomy, and so on to basically sustain themselves, which then led to civilization, which leads to a ton of other conspiracy theories, such as the Sumerian handbag theory. So the basic idea of the Sumerian handbag theory is that a lot of ancient civilizations have these stories of these gods or these higher beings that they call some conglomeration of the words civilization bringers or bringers of civilization that come to them with advanced knowledge and practices that seem divine or magical or whatever, and help push them forward to develop their society or help them in some kind of way. This relates a lot, again, to the Hollow Earth and Atlantis video, where I go deeper, especially the Hollow Earth video, I think, because there's so many stories of people coming out of the ground or coming out of caves after some catastrophe and helping hunter-gatherers advance their society with knowledge from this fallen civilization. This video is a fever dream. Some more extreme theories about the Anunnaki claim that every religion that we have today or have believed in since their departure has been constructed so that we worship them indirectly without even knowing that it's them. There are claims of the Anunnaki also mating with mankind, creating kind of like a hybrid that have... Gertie. Look at this. Gertie just always want... What? You always... There are claims that the Anunnaki also mated with early man, creating some form of hybrid that had extraordinary strength, were massive, and to an extent had some form of power. Proponents of this theory often quote Genesis: "When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose." This, in my mind, depending on if you take the Book of Enoch and other non-canonized biblical texts talking of the Nephilim, the angels who mated with mankind, it kind of lines up a little bit, and it's just weird. It's just, this whole video is me just saying, look at this other theory and look at these weird stories that kind of coincidentally fit together, and tell me if you believe it or not. That's basically this whole video. As we mentioned earlier, the Anunnaki allegedly had to leave Earth. Now, this theory states then that they didn't stop ruling Earth. They just did it indirectly with planted rulers and chosen bloodlines to lead humanity in a certain direction that the Anunnaki wanted to steer us. So that even though they're off planet, they still have influence via the leaders that we follow and the religions that we believe in. The idea that kings and queens and royal families and royal bloodlines are chosen by God or are picked through divinity is not a new concept. It's been around in almost every aspect of humanity's history, from Egypt to Europe to Asia to India to everywhere that there was a kingdom. At some point, they have claimed that their bloodline or their rule was chosen by God and that they have the authority of God with them. Now, is this true? Again, it comes back to what you believe in, but it begs the question of, is this just an old tradition, or is it something that was true based on these higher dimensional beings that then has been skewed over the millennium as man has kind of gained and lost power? The more simple answer is that people are just power hungry and that they just want to use the highest level of authority to manipulate the masses. However, if you want to believe that an ancient race of aliens chose people to lead humanity in a direction so that they could have better control over us, and everyone that we see in power are ancient lizard people, it's way more enjoyable to think about. I think it's fun. I think it's more fun. So I know that this video was kind of a fucking shit show, but I felt like I needed to talk about this because it connects to so many other theories, and that it kind of, I don't know, in my mind, it's just another piece to a massive puzzle within the alternative fringe history, conspiracy, ancient theory bubble. And I felt like I needed to make a video talking about it so that with other videos, such as the ones I've mentioned in future videos, that there is context and a little bit more of an understanding of some connections being made. I think a lot of my thoughts about this theory can be heard and watched in later videos, because I do find it really interesting that there are these ancient stories of these advanced beings that started humanity or helped with humanity or whatnot, and they all kind of connect and say similar things. I bring up this analogy in my Atlantis video, I think, that like if there was this ancient race of beings that were super powerful and super knowledgeable of the universe and whatnot, and then they were wiped out by a flood or some cataclysm, the people that are more likely to survive are the ones that, one, prepare, and two, already live on the land. So hunter-gatherers are more likely to survive a natural event or a natural environment than you and I, who live off of air conditioning and filtered water. So if there are beings who can build a society via farming, via metallurgy or whatever, medicine, and they try to explain how penicillin is made to that uncontacted tribe. I can't remember what they're called. I think they're outside of, like, I don't know, like they're on like I think they're over by India or something like this. They try to explain how a car is built, or if you fly over, uncontacted tribes with planes, they're gonna think it's a UFO. How are they gonna describe that in their traditions? And I'm not saying that they can't think or do things on their own. If the world ended today and I showed up and I survived, and I showed up to a hunter-gatherer group and I showed them my phone, and they've never seen that before, never heard of it, I mean, how would they handle the internet? It would be wild. So I think that it's more of a telephone game, potentially, that people are now just looking at a different lens, because there's no way to 110% verify ancient texts and shit like that. Like, we're just interpreting it, and maybe it is supposed to be more poetic, maybe it is supposed to be an analogy. I have no idea. I don't know, but it is fun, it is interesting, and I think it makes for a good thought exercise to question, the mainstream and all that. And I think it's fun. That's all I gotta say. But with that being said, this was just kind of like a quicker synopsis of the Anunnaki for all the reasons I've already said. So with that, I will leave that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And dude, guys, on a side note, thank you so much for all the positive comments on my Scientology video. I really appreciate all the love and support there. If there are any other video topics that you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I did see some comments about like my delivery. I will try to make that better in the future, but I just gotta get better at talking on camera. So with that being said, thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Stay toasty. She is such a precious little baby. Oh my God, I love you.